want to do a quick demo of this PowerShell function that I just threw together. I was sick and tired of having to manually go through and calculate the end resulting crop size that I would need to use for an image in order to hit a desired ratio. Let's say a 16:9. I knew the math that I'd have to do, so I figured I could throw it together into a PowerShell function. Here's just the code, which you can find on my GitHub. You have that the length and width parameters are mandatory. Goes through, does the math. If you'd like, you could change the ratio. You just have to make sure that they are separated by a colon. Currently, that is the only delimiter that this function supports. So that would have to be a future piece of development enhancement if I would ever want to allow people to separate their ratios differently. Without loss of any generality, I have it so that the large and the small numbers are calculated. So I just real quick find the max and the min of those two ratio numbers, of the two dimension numbers that were supplied. And then the math behind it just relies on checking which proportion is the smaller of the two, whether the large dimension divided by the large ratio number or the small divided by the small. Whichever of those proportions is smaller actually becomes the scale factor that you're going to use to then determine the output long and short edges. So let's see this function that I threw together in an actual PowerShell session. Now I have some fancy tricks where I can import that Jackal math module. And just to make sure that my function is loaded, we'll run get help on find crop size. Sure enough, it's there. And it reminds you that, yep, length and width are required. Ratio is an optional. And the size image that ultimately inspired going and writing this function so that I no longer had to do it by hand was 19:20 by roughly 890. And as you can see, if I do a long and short edge of 1568 by 882, it will give me that 16:9 ratio. Just to confirm that the math is working correctly, there's the decimal representation of 16/9. And if I run 1568 over 882, I should get that same decimal representation. There you have it. The function's working as desired. So now if I pull up my image, I can shorten the long edge by roughly 350 pixels, but I barely have to shorten the short edge at all. And it will result in a finished crop size of 16:9 ratio, which is perfect to use for the YouTube thumbnail that I was creating. If you have any other questions or you want to reach out and get some tips on how to set up a PowerShell environment with quick access to these little helper functions, whether downloaded from my GitHub or that you want to learn to write yourself, please reach out at Jackal Brute. I would be tickled pink to be able to assist you along your PowerShell development journey. But until next time, keep an eye on those brackets. Make sure anything that you open, you close it.